Does this sound familiar? You have felt misunderstood your entire life, and as a result, you stay guarded when you're interacting with people, waiting until you feel safe to open up and show them the real you. If you are tired of being guarded, I'm so glad you're here because it's time to take some risks to create relational trust. Hey lady, welcome to the Highly Sensitive Woman podcast. Do you struggle with self-doubt, setting boundaries, or feeling overwhelmed? My name is Alyssa, and I'm a highly sensitive woman who spent years trying to fit in, ignoring my own needs, and living in constant fear of disappointing others. But I finally discovered the power of embracing who I am, and now I don't feel so broken. In this podcast, you'll learn to find your voice, set boundaries, and live with bold confidence and inner peace. Grab a cozy blanket. It's time to connect with someone just like you. Hello to all of you listening throughout the world. I'm so glad that you are here. I want to start by saying thank you so much to everyone who has left a review and shared this podcast with your friends and your family since we launched back in March. It really does mean the world to me. And remember, if you have done both of those things, if you have written a review and you have shared it, anytime since we have been on the air, so to speak, take a screenshot of those and send those to me at info@lifecoachalyssa.com, and you will be entered to win the book of your choice between 3 of my absolute favorite books. And speaking of reviews, I want to share one with you from Rebecca S78. It is titled Truth. Thanks, Alyssa, for sharing your relatable stories, experiences, and being transparent to help others. So grateful for your podcast. I am so grateful for you too, Rebecca, and thank you so much for your kind words. I am glad that my stories are resonating with some of you, and hopefully, maybe by listening to my stories, you will save yourself some agony, and you don't have to have the lived experience to learn from it. You can just learn from mine. So speaking of my learned experiences, I have always felt misunderstood, and I tended to stay pretty quiet and did not show people the real me because, oh goodness, what if they didn't like the real me? And then it occurred to me one day, well, what if they did? What if they did like that version that I was presenting to them? Well, then I had to continue to be that person, which kind of perpetuated that feeling of feeling misunderstood. And I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't hurt when people don't like us. It absolutely does, whether we are pretending to be something that we think they're going to like better than the real us, or if we are allowing ourselves to be our true, authentic selves. It hurts if they don't like us. But it also hurts when we have to pretend to be someone when we feel like that's what we need to do to be liked. And I have experienced that. I have experienced not being liked for myself, and I have experienced not being liked for a different version of myself when I felt like I had to pretend. But what was interesting is when I started really being myself, and there were some people who it didn't work for them anymore, and that was okay. It created space to allow other people to come into my life who are a great fit and with whom I can be myself on a consistent basis. And that is so worth the pain of the rejection. Again, I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't hurt. It absolutely does. But if you can take care of yourself in that moment and remind yourself that it will be worth it, I promise you, it will in fact be worth it. So I'm seeing this coming up pretty consistently with my clients. And so I wanted to talk about some ways that being guarded is showing up and some solutions to help you be yourself and create those connections that you really are craving. So tell me if this sounds familiar. You find yourself in a conversation with maybe it's one-on-one, maybe it's a small group of people, and you are being pretty quiet in those conversations because you're trying to come up with the absolute perfect thing to say or ask. And you have about 15 different thoughts that collide and none of them stick, and then you're just kind of quiet. And now you're not part of the conversation, and you are worried about what they might be thinking of you. What if the other person is also worried about what you might be thinking of them? What if you don't take the risk to say anything because you're afraid that you might get it wrong? And on their side, they're like, oh my gosh, why is she being so quiet? Maybe I've said something and she's offended. Or maybe they think that you're not interested in their story. Or maybe you're missing other details of their story that you can't remember because you were trying to think of the perfect thing, and then you feel terrible and you beat yourself up, and so then you're less inclined to be engaged because now you're feeling yucky because you were beating yourself up, and you just kind of end up in this perpetual cycle. I have been there. I know what it is like, and it is not super fun because now you're missing out on having a great conversation, which is what you want so desperately to be having. Maybe you're quiet because it just takes you a little bit longer to process and the conversation has moved on, and so now we're on to a different topic and you feel embarrassed because you don't want to circle back around. I have a tip for both of these things. When the thought finally comes to you and you are ready to re-engage in the conversation, or the conversation has moved on and they've gone to a different topic, and a thought comes to you later because you took the pressure off of your brain to come up with something in the moment, and 5-10 minutes later, it's finally like, oh, here's the thought that I had about what we were talking about. So here in this moment, I'm going to be myself. As you have been hearing, as I've been recording, my dog has decided that it is time to get a drink and also playtime. So here I am, just showing up as my full authentic self in this moment. Anyhow, let's pretend like you're in a conversation and you have put some pressure on yourself to come up with the perfect thing to say, and no thoughts come. And then conversation goes on to something else, and 5, 10, 15 minutes later, the thought finally comes to you because you have taken the pressure off. She is making me laugh, but I suppose I should pause for a moment. Okay, jumping back in. I think that the timing is kind of perfect because the solution that I was going to offer always makes people laugh. And so I think it's just very appropriate that my dog was making me laugh, and it just kind of leads me to this. Whenever that happens to me, when a thought comes to me after the moment has passed, but I want to bring it back up, I will look at either my friend or my group of friends and say, okay, so conversation whiplash, and I will bring it back up. And I promise you, people will laugh. They think that is a really funny thing, and I can't take credit. I learned that phrase from someone else, but it really is a nice way to kind of break the ice and revisit the topic that you wanted to revisit, and not make it seem like it's completely out of the blue. Like, it lets the people know that you were thinking about it and something came to mind and you wanted to revisit that topic. And it just makes it a nice, easy way to do that. So I know that can feel like a risk, but I want to encourage you to take that risk and see how it goes and if it helps you create the relationship trust that you are wanting. Another thing that is so interesting is we are waiting until we feel really comfortable before we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and to show up as ourselves. But what if the other person is also waiting for somebody else to take the lead and for them to feel comfortable before they really start to open up? And what happens is you are giving all of your power to them, and they might be giving their power to you. So what if you allowed yourself to have your own power and to not give that away and take the lead? What if you took the risk to be the one who shows some vulnerability and lets those guards down first. I know it can be scary, and it can also really be worth it. And I have a third option for you for taking a risk to create that relationship trust. Because you are a thoughtful, compassionate person who has a kind and caring heart, I feel pretty confident that you revisit conversations that you have had, not in a way that you're ruminating, but in a very thoughtful way, and you have some follow-up questions for your friend. I want you to give yourself permission to revisit a conversation or a topic as many times as you would like. If the other person doesn't want to talk about it anymore, they certainly have a responsibility in there too to say, I'm tired of talking about this, I don't want to talk about it anymore. But it is perfectly fine to revisit conversations. And if you are nervous about it, or you're just afraid that you are going to forget, which definitely happens to me with people that I have established relationships, I'm afraid that I'm going to forget. But in the beginning, I used the same tactic when I was nervous. I would literally make notes in my phone of questions that I wanted to ask or thoughts that came to me when I was replaying these conversations. And when I sat down with people, I would get my phone out and say, I made some notes because I didn't want to forget the thoughts or the questions that I had. And to be completely transparent, not one person has ever been bothered by that. I think honestly, if I had to guess, on the flip side, they actually are honored that you cared that much to give the conversation with them that much thought, that you came up with some questions or you came up with some ideas that you wanted to share and you took the time to write them down and to revisit the conversation. So something that we fear will not be accepted. I think when we allow ourselves to take some risks, you will find that it has the complete opposite effect, and it really does allow you to create that emotional and relationship trust that you are craving and build those relationships that are fulfilling and go way beyond the surface level stuff that most of us highly sensitive women are not super interested in all the time. There is a time and a place for surface level conversations for sure, but when it comes to connection, we really want to get into some of that deep, heartfelt stuff. I hope this gives you some ideas for how you can take risks to build trust in the relationships that you have and to make space for people to accept you for who you really are. If you want to be entered in the drawing for the book of your choice, either The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron, The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown, or Abundant Ever After by Kathy Eller, write a review, share the podcast on social media, take screenshots of both of those things, and email them to info@lifecoachalissa.com. I will be doing the drawing for those on June 13th. Also, through the end of June, through June 30th, 2025, I am still offering buy one, get one coaching sessions. And those sessions can be used anytime between now and September 30th of 2025. You can schedule a complimentary consultation and see if we might be a good fit. I'll talk to you soon. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who may be feeling like she's broken too? I'd love it if you leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. It brings me so much joy to know this podcast is helping you. Now it's time for me to stop talking and go soothe my senses in nature. I'll meet you back here next week for another episode. Take care.